As matriculants around the country gear up to receive their matric results, many will be dealing with the reality that their matric results simply don't allow them to follow their desired career path. I'm joined on the line by Peter Creel of the Independent Institute of Education to speak to us about the different avenues available to these matriculants. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Now, as I've mentioned, tensions are rather high as matriculants await those results. This is perfectly normal, isn't it?
It's absolutely normal. For strong students, weak students, it's normal. So we wish them good luck.
Let's speak specifically about those students who realize that unfortunately their matric results don't allow them to follow their desired career path. There are different avenues available to them, and I'd like for you to please talk us through some of those avenues.
All right, yeah, there's a number of avenues available. We've highlighted 5 of those, which I think are key to the young people that are going to receive the matric results soon. Depending on the degree of failure or how badly you did, you may also look at some of these options differently. Firstly, you may choose to repeat the year. I mean, if you simply failed, you cannot access any form of higher education anywhere, then I don't think you have an alternative but to repeat the year. Whether you do it at the school where you did your matric or whether you go to an institution that specializes in the matric year, be it online or face-to-face, that is your choice. Some young people don't want to go back to school, but that's certainly something to consider. If, for example, you didn't do so well in one of your subjects or failed 1 or 2, the option of writing supplementary examinations are also a possibility. There are quite strict guidelines around that, so not everybody who failed a subject will be able to do that. And it's advised that those young people who fall into that category make contact with their schools as soon as possible. The third, and not necessarily the third in ranking of importance, is to, if you passed matric but you didn't do as well as expected. For example, you didn't meet the application score that you would need for some public institutions, then you can look at alternative institutions. There are a lot of registered and accredited higher education providers, both public and private, and those are options to consider. So if you're not accepted at the biggest university in your city, don't despair, there are alternative choices. I think the fourth one affects quite a few young people. I wanted to become a medical doctor, now my maths mark is not good enough to get in. What do I do? Well, if you know that you can improve your math mark, then maybe you can repeat that year or you can rewrite maths specifically, and I use maths merely as an example, it may be any other subject as well. But I believe that at this stage you also have to take stock, be realistic. Am I ever going to improve my maths mark to the point where I will get accepted into medicine, for example? In this case, there are a plethora of other opportunities, be it career opportunities, study opportunities. You don't have to go into that degree. Maybe it's simply not for you. I mean, the world will be a very boring place if we're all medical doctors or lawyers. In fact, we will be functioning. So I think young people must also be realistic, say, what can I do? The fifth one on my list is to get some life experience. In many instances, young people who don't do that well is simply because they were not mature enough. It's not that they didn't have the cognitive ability or that they were stupid in plain English. It's just that they were not mature enough. I mean, many of us grown-ups who've been out of school for many years would sit back and say, well, if only I was still at school, I would do so much better and I would do things differently. And for those young people, if you don't get into your first choice higher education provider, and you may not want to repeat the year because it's not necessary, some kind of work. I always prefer community work because then it gives you a sense of self again, because if you don't do that well in matric, you know what, you're going to go into what in young people's mind a zone of almost depression and say, well, I'm not worthwhile. So doing community work where you are appreciated for that is always, in my opinion, not only a positive, but it also gives you life experience.